Good morning, everyone. My name is Chetan Singh. I'm the moderator for this webinar. And I welcome you all to this webinar on practical aspects of court management by Honorable Mr. Justice Surinder Gupta, sir. Apologies for a delay of 2-3 minutes. There was some technical glitch. So I take the brunt of it, and I'm sorry for this. But the focus, let's talk about what is the focus of today's session. Today's session is very important, and I'm really honored to share this online space with Sir, my lordship over here. Now, before we start the session, I would like to, introduce Sir to you. I'm sure everyone knows Sir. Honorable Mr. Justice Surinder Gupta, sir, was born on March 30th, 1958 at Firozpur. He completed his education up to graduation level at Firozpur and LLB from Garhwal University, Srinagar, Uttarakhand. After a brief spell of practice as an advocate, he joined Punjab Civil Services Judicial on 17th of October 1983 and was promoted as member of Superior Judicial Services, Punjab, in the year 1999. In his capacity as Additional and Distinct Session Judge, he remained posted at Jalandhar, Patiala, and also worked as Presiding Officer, Industrial Tribunal and Labour Court, Union Territory, Chandigarh. He became District and Session Judge in the month of March 2008 and worked in various capacities as District and Session Judge, Fatehgarh Sahib, District and Session Judge, cum Registrar Vigilance, Punjab, Registrar Vigilance, Punjab and Haryana High Court, Legal Remembrance cum Law Secretary, Government of Punjab, and Registrar General of Punjab and Haryana High Court. Sworn in as Additional Judge of Punjab and Haryana High Court on June 20th, 2013, and retired on March 29, 2020. With so much of experience, with so much of wisdom that he has to share, I don't think I should be taking much time, of his time. And on behalf of everyone, I would like to request and welcome Honorable Lordship. And sir, we have members from all state judiciaries, from PNH, from other state judiciaries. I have also sent a request to international judicial officers from our neighboring countries. So I think this would be a session wherein you'll be addressing, I think, if not all the countries, but at least the entire India in one go. So I would request you to please start the session, sir. So over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, all the participants of this webinar. In this Corona time, I hope you and your family are enjoying good health. While this Corona time is scaring us, it has also given us the opportunity to be on a platform through such webinars. As Mr. Chetan Gill has apprised you just now that I joined in the year 1983. So had a long inning of 36.5 years. So my entire address will be not on law. I will not be touching any provision of CPC, CRPC, IPC. It will be based on my experiences or what I have learned from my senior colleagues and other judges. There was a time when it was being debated in the legal circle as to whether the statement of witness can be recorded through video conferencing. Some were advocating it, the use of technology in the courts, while others were opposing even the recording of statement of witnesses through video conferencing. Different high courts were having different opinions. The matter ultimately went to the Honorable Apex Court in the case of State of Maharashtra versus Dr. Prafulla B. Desai, which was decided on 1st of April 2003. And it was held that statement of witness can be recorded through video conferencing. This opened the gates for use of technology in the court. Later on, the accused were produced through video conferencing. Remand work was done through video conferencing. Witnesses were examined, doctors and other officials were examined through video conferencing. This Corona time, it has given a boost to the user of this technology. Today, the courts are online. The classes in the school and colleges are online. Meetings are online. Relatives and friends, they are online. I hope that this system is going to be used at larger scale in future and better utilized. My today's topic is practical aspect of court management. Court management is a very vast subject, and I hope that all the judicial officers and other participants must have attended so many seminars on it, so many workshops. I have taken a little bit practical aspect of court management, so I will be touching only that. And one more thing I want to make clear, that while discussing about the court working and the experience, I will be touching Punjab and Haryana High Court working in the state of Haryana, working in the state of Punjab and Chandigarh. For a judicial officer, management is most important aspect which reflect upon his personality, caliber, efficiency, excellence in skill of court management. This aspect of skill of a judicial officer is usually discussed. Everybody, you all the participants, your family members, your friends, must have heard the lawyers, the litigants discussing about the judicial officer's conduct in the court, how he conducts the courts. You must have come across the compliments a judicial officer receives. That particular officer has excellent control over court proceeding. His court management is magnificent. A lawyer or a litigant discussing that it's a pleasure to appear in the court of a particular officer. There is a lot to learn from him. So and so officer maintains good rapport with staff, colleagues, and bar. Such comments every judicial officer wish to hear about his working, and it's not difficult. The only thing you have to do, you have to excel in the art of court management. There are two aspects of the court management if you broadly take it. One is what is visible to the public. Public, I mean litigant, to the bar, to the general public who come to the court and attend the proceeding. Another is on the administrative side, but both are very important. So firstly, I take what is visible to the public. Visible to the public is court behavior of a judicial officer, his control over the proceedings, how the court deals with a witness, summoned or brought by a party for examination in court, court language, language of orders, judgment. Generally, the lawyers, the litigants, and even the public gather the impression and form opinion about the skill of court management from the court proceedings. Other aspects of court management which are equally important for a judicial officer are: one, how to maintain balance between quality and quantity, how to draw balance between administrative and judicial duties. We all know that we have only 86,400 seconds a day, 1,440 minutes, or say 24 hours, and we have to utilize this time to excel. Then another very important thing is how to check the stress level, because a judicial officer has to perform arduous duties. His working hours are sometimes 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours, sometimes even more. He has to spend, say, 7 to 8 hours in the court, and then 3 or 4 hours at residence in the camp office while preparing the cases. He has also to deal with the issues which arise during the daily working. So what I want to convey is that court management is a very vast subject. I will be touching not all, it's not possible in the given time to touch all the aspects of the court management. I will be touching some of the aspects which will help in bettering your skill of court management. First of all, I take the issue of court management. I take the issue of court behavior. When I start discussing the court behavior of a judicial officer, I recall a quote from Socrates, a great philosopher, who aptly described the behavior of a judge, the qualities of a judge, when he said, 4 things belong to a judge. 1, to hear courteously. 2, to answer wisely. 3, to consider soberly. And 4, to decide impartially. What he said is as true and relevant even today. Behavior of a judicial officer in court reflects his personality. A judicial officer who is pleasant, dignified, courteous in his behavior towards litigants, general public, colleagues, lawyers, staff, he is commended not by his colleagues but by the litigants as well as the lawyers. They feel very comfortable in his court. Now, the first requirement from a judicial officer is patient hearing. As Socrates says, to hear courteously. A litigant comes to the court with the belief that he will be heard before his case is decided. He engages counsel to present his case. He brings witness in support of his contention. So a duty is cast upon the judicial officer to deal with the lawyer and the litigant witnesses courteously. So what they can do? 1, they have to be courteous, at the same time firm and tactful. They are required to give patient hearing, and most important of all is they have to be very, very careful about the language they use in the court. Now, the question is, where arises the problem? If everything goes smoothly, then where arises the problem? Every lawyer who appears in the court, as you all know by your experience, that they have different temperament. Some are polite, respectful, and obey the directions of the court, but some are otherwise also. Few lawyers, it is always complained by the judicial officers that they are irritating and may use rough language and try to intimidate the court. Some have perfected in the art of I am right, exhibit belligerence, try to probe it. My advice to the judicial officer is there are only few of them. My experience tells that by and large the bar is always very cooperative. But few elements on both sides. I will discuss about the judicial officer also later. So what is required of a judicial officer? He has not to fall in their trap. Keep his cool even in the adversities. Be tolerant and humble. Keep your cool. If a lawyer is creating a scene in the court, be courteous. Don't join him. You have not to reciprocate in the language being used by a lawyer or by a illiterate litigant. It is the duty of the judge to maintain the decorum of the court. If suppose a stage has arisen that you have to reprimand a lawyer or a party for their conduct in the court, even at that time, I will suggest that harsh language should not be used. Don't lose your control of mind. You can be firm when you are polite. You may, if required, avail the other ways to tackle the problem, report the matter to the district and session judge, bring the conduct of a particular counsel to the notice of the office bearer of the bar. But your conduct in the court should show that you are a seasoned judge and your language should be like that. Now I come on the other side. I have the opportunity to work on the post of district and session judge vigilance and then registrar vigilance also. We have received so many complaints, and most of the complaints were for the behavior of some of the judges in the court with the lawyer, with the litigants. The number is very few, but even that small number affects the reputation of the institution of the judiciary, and we have to concentrate on it. A few days back, I was reading in the newspapers that in one of the state of this country, a rape victim was produced before a magistrate for recording her statement under section 164 CRPC. He recorded her statement and asked the rape victim to sign it. She refused. She insisted that no, this statement should be first read to me, only then I will sign. This irritated the judicial officer. I am telling you what I have read in the newspaper, what are the real facts. I am not aware of it, but this is what was reported. He, instead of reading the statement to her, started taking action against that rape victim, and as per the report, he sent the rape victim as well as two social activists who have accompanied her to jail. I don't know why and under what circumstances this happened, but this has certainly brought, this is a blot on the working of the court and has been widely reported in the newspapers also. Such behavior should not be. So my test concerning the court behavior of a judicial officer will be, first, he has to keep cool, and secondly, he has to take note of the language he is using in the court. I have some suggestions which can help in improving the court behavior. One, possess and practice humility, as I have already discussed. We must believe this fact that we are not infallible. No judicial officer, no counsel, no litigant is infallible. Everybody is infallible. Everybody is fallible. Please listen the counsel very carefully. Inculcate this habit, develop this habit. It will help you in long run. Give a patient hearing. A lawyer always works hard to prepare the case of his client. His arguments are of great assistance to write a good judgment. A judicial officer should also avoid jumping to a conclusion. During argument, he may put a query to the lawyer, but the query should be such that it should not depict your mind, or it should not depict your conclusion. I remember that once I was additional district judge, and I was sitting with the Honorable Judge of Punjab and High Court. The father of that Honorable Judge was an advocate in some other High Court. He told us that his father discussed some case with him. After hearing the case and facts of the case, the Honorable Judge just told him there is nothing in your case. This irritated his father. How can you say, I have this point, I have this point, and I have this point? The question is whether those points weigh before the judicial officer or not. That is a separate matter. He can deal with it in the judgment. But jumping to the conclusion, if a father of an honorable judge could not tolerate that jumping to the conclusion, how could a client in the court or a lawyer could tolerate it? So please don't jump. Sometimes the arguments of the counsels may convince you that the conclusion you have drawn on the basis of the facts of the case, on the basis of the law in your mind, which you have come across, require reconsideration. It may not be that correct as you are thinking. So, if you are courteous, if you are patient in hearing, so many things happen, and you are always in a position to write a better judgment. Another point which I will stress is keep the decorum and atmosphere in your court cool, calm, comfortable. Here, I will like to say one thing. Some judges are witty. You can be witty. There is no harm in it. But take care that your wit is not harming or offending anybody. The lawyers have better qualities. They are more witty and are always in search of the opportunity to exhibit their wit, and you may not sometimes tolerate the wit on the other side. So be careful about it. Next is time management. As I have said in the beginning that you have only, everybody has 86,400 seconds at his disposal. Plan your day in such a manner that after devoting time to the court proceedings, you have time to attend to your dictations of order, judgment, administrative work, correction of the judgment, looking after the administrative duties, then conducting the appraisal of the pending cases, disposal, writing of judgment, sending of file to the record room, sending of file to the contingency. These all require time. So what we have been doing and seeing our colleagues doing, some used to come early in the morning before court hours, and some used to sit late in the court hours. It is up to the judicial officer whether he wants to come early or, but he has to manage the time. Time management is very, very important for a judicial officer, and a judicial officer who is successful in management of the time, he will never fail and always perform better. Now, another very important factor about the court management is the health of the judicial officer. The quantum of work, long working hours, turn the life of the judicial officer into a sedentary life, giving rise to many problems. I remember one of our session judges used to say in the monthly meeting that do some exercise, otherwise this chair will eat you. It's quite true. Sedentary lifestyle give rise to several problems like blood pressure, diabetes, spondylitis, migraine, backache, varicose veins, so many, like you can count so many problems. So health is a very, very important aspect of court management. If a judicial officer is not keeping a good health, he will not be in a position to attend to his work efficiently. He will always feel tired, irritated, and which will further reflect upon his working style in the court. So I will suggest, it may be a new thing for you to, whether it can be a part of the court management, but I feel it is a very, very important part of the court management. I will suggest to all the judicial officers and other participants in this webinar to include in their daily routine physical exercises. It is up to them. They go for a walk, they do yoga, cycling, they go to gym, do meditation, whatever they like, but make it a part of your life and see that at least 60 minutes per day are devoted to you. It is your health which is yours and will help you in doing better. One more suggestion is that take care of your diet also. In the busy schedule, diet is the victim. So please take that breakfast, lunch, dinner at fixed hours. So before switching over to another topic of the court management, what I will suggest is always maintain your judicial temperament, which include patience, humility, compassion, punctuality, discipline, firmness, tactfulness, and the most important thing is always sit in the court with open mind. So with preconceived mind, you cannot do justice. Sometimes you say this will happen in the court in a particular case, but when you come across the arguments of the counsel, when you go through the evidence, you find that things are otherwise. So please try to develop all these qualities, and it will help you in help you to excel in the art of court management. Now I take another very important aspect, that is the behavior and attendance towards the witnesses who come to the court. Much has been written about this, and witnesses who come to the court feel delighted if he comes and is examined, and he goes back home very happily. But my experience tells that it is not happening like this in the court. Witnesses have to come time and again. Before I start with this topic about the witnesses, I just want to draw your attention towards the observation of the Apex Court about the witnesses who had to appear in a court. It's a case of State of UP versus Shambhunath Singh, Criminal Appeal number 392 of 2001. This is the first judgment where I have found the perturbed mind of the Honorable Apex Court on seeing the working of the lower courts. The very first line, I will just go through few of the lines of this judgment. It starts with the words, witnesses tremble on getting summons from the court. This is the first line. Witnesses tremble on getting summons from the court in India, not because they fear examination or cross-examination in court, but because of the fear that they might not be examined at all on all the dates they appear. The day on which they have to come to the court, they are nailed to the precinct of the court, awaiting their chance of being examined. The witness perforce keep aside their avocation and go to the courts and wait for hours to be told at the end of the day to come again, and wait like that. This is the infelicious scenario in many of the courts in India, so far as witnesses are concerned. It is high time that trial court should regard the witness as guest invited for helping such court with their testimony for reaching judicial findings. I read this line again. It is high time that trial court should regard witness as guest invited for helping such courts with their testimony for reaching judicial finding. But the malady is that the predicament of the witness is worse than the litigant themselves. This is what the Honorable Apex Court say about the fate of a witness who has to come to the court. Before going further, I recollect a story that I read just when I joined in '83 or before my coming to this profession. It was a very research story. The research was conducted by an NGO with the help of some lawyers. They have taken two cases, one civil and one criminal, followed it from the inception till last. They kept an eye on the court proceeding. They were in contact with the parties. They were going to their villages, seeing how they procure the witness, what is the atmosphere in their house. It was a very lengthy story, but due to the time restraint, I will just summarize it. The first case was a case of declaration filed by the plaintiffs seeking, claiming their share in the property of their father on the basis of natural succession. The defendants were contesting the claim and had set up a will. After completion of the pleadings, issues were framed, case was fixed for the plaintiff evidence. After few days, the statement of one of the plaintiff was recorded. As the plaintiffs have not to do anything, it was admittedly the property of the father. So they were not required to produce any other evidence. Now came the turn of the defendant, and date was given to him to bring the witness. The defendant contacts his counsel, who asked him, you bring the scribe of the will and marginal witnesses. The stories tells in detail how he contacts the scribe and make him to agree to appear in the court. And then he goes to one of the marginal witness, request him to come to the court and to depose. The first marginal witness refuses. He says the plaintiff as well as the defendant were dear to him, so he can't offend any of them, so he will not appear. The reason given by that witness may be true, or he may have been prevailed upon by the other party. Then he goes to the second witness. He takes some of his well-wishers with him also, who prevail upon him, who request him to appear in the court, and he agrees. After a few days, the defendant takes that witness to the office of the counsel, who apprise him about the manner he has to depose. The story depicts the atmosphere in the family of the defendant in detail, what they are talking, how they are behaving. The whole of the family was discussing that case. The whole of the family was discussing about the statement of that witness. The family was discussing time and again what will be the fate of the case. Now comes that date on which the witness had to go to the court. The defendant, with the well-wishers, again goes to the house of the witness a day before, tells him that he had arranged a taxi. Can you remember at that time, arranging a car was how much costly? The defendant has never traveled in the taxi, but for a witness he had arranged a taxi. He asked him to be ready by 7:30 in the morning because they had to go to the office of the counsel and then to the court. On the date fixed, the atmosphere in the family of defendant was highly surcharged. Ladies got up in the morning early. After daily routine, they prepared the breakfast, packed the lunch, and ensured that the males are ready to go to the house of the witness at 7 a.m. They went to the house of the witness, took him to the office of the counsel, who again apprised him about the manner of statement he has to make. Then they reached the court well before the court time. Outside the court there was a tree, and they kept on sitting on the platform around that tree till lunch, but their turn did not come. Again, after lunch they were there, and their case was called at after 2 p.m. They were very happy and rushed inside the court with the counsel, but the counsel for the other party was not there. The counsel for the defendant requested to record the examination chief of defendant and his witness, but the learned presiding officer did not want to record it in the absence of the counsel for the plaintiff, and asked them to wait. They came out, kept on waiting, court time was over, and ultimately a date was given. In the same taxi, the defendant took the witness to his house, left him there, came to his house. It was again repeated on the next date. But the statement of the witness again could not be recorded. On the third date, the defendant was very eager, very perturbed that today my witness should be examined. He asked his counsel and requested him that the statement of witness should be recorded, otherwise that witness may be prevailed upon by the other party. Unfortunately, even on the third date, the statement of the witness was not recorded. And on the fourth date fixed for the statement of the witness had gone. He had been prevailed upon by the other side, and he also refused to appear for the defendant. Now see the fate of that person, anxiety of that person. Both the marginal witnesses were not ready to agree, were not ready to depose. He met his counsel, who asked him to summon that witness and assured him that he will get the required information, declare that witness hostile, whatever. But just see the agony. How much he had to spend on the witness, how much efforts he had to bring that witness. Similar were the facts of the other case, which was an injury case. The witness kept on coming to the court and were not examined and ultimately prevailed upon. And the accused party also prevailed upon the complainant, and the matter ended in acquittal. All the witnesses turned hostile. So my purpose of telling this story is a judicial officer is required to understand the agony of the party who brings the witness with great difficulty. Even the official witness, they are to be contacted. They don't come on summons only. So keeping this in mind, make sure that whenever the witness is summoned, he should not go unexamined. Now the question is, everybody will say, I have a heavy charge list. It's not possible to examine all the witnesses. This is not my fault. All right. We have to do something to improve our working. My suggestion will be, after completion of pleading and framing of issues, every case is fixed for the evidence of plaintiff. Please don't do it. Don't fix any case for the evidence of plaintiff after framing of issue. Why I am saying so? As per Order 16 Rule 1, list of witnesses is required. In most of the cases, in most of the courts, we don't find that list of witnesses called. I tell you the difference if you fix the case for evidence and if you follow the procedure as I am suggesting to you. Call for the list of witnesses and the affidavit of the witnesses. As it is a routine, on first date you will not get even the list of witnesses or the affidavit of the witness. All right, accommodate the party, give another date. For that, you can give a 10 days date, 15 days date. If you give 2 or 3 dates for this purpose, it will not be taking much time. The list will be ready within, say, 45 days. Affidavit, witness are there. Now see the other side. You have fixed the case for evidence, given 2 months date or 1.5 months date. You have given 3-4 dates, 6 months are gone. If you fix the case for list of witnesses and affidavit, now the witness can be examined on examination chief can be on affidavit as per the provisions of Order 18 Rule 4. The trial will be expedited, one. Secondly, if you keep the case at evidence stage instead of calling for the list of witness and affidavit, on 3rd or 4th date, if you are not allowing the adjournment, what the counsel will do? He will give you the affidavit of 1 or 2 witnesses. The other party will seek adjournment to go through the affidavit before cross-examination. So adopt this practice that after framing of issues, call for the list of witness and affidavit of the witnesses. It will be very helpful. Why? Once the list of witnesses is ready, half of the job of the counsel for that party is over. And once he submitted the affidavit of examination chief, he has completed his job and will produce the witness on the next date. The other counsel, he has got the statement of the witness, can easily prepare the cross-examination. Thirdly, the court is aware how many witnesses are to be examined in this case, so can fix the number of cases accordingly on a particular date that all the witnesses are examined. So this practice, if adopted, will help you in not only in expediting the case, but also examining the witness on the day appear. One more thing I will like to add about it is, there is practice in some court that case is fixed for evidence, and the day on which the witness appears, he only tenders the affidavit and say, I tender my affidavit exhibit P1 with so and so documents. Then cross-examination deferred as the counsel for the defendant wants to go through the affidavit given by the counsel of plaintiff. On the day affidavits are submitted, witness is not required to be called to the court. It will save the time of the court. It will save the unnecessary expenses of the witness as well. So don't call the witness on the day affidavit is tendered. Call him on the day his statement is to be recorded. The 3-4 line he has to made in the court regarding the affidavit can be recorded on that day. The purpose is to supply the copy of the affidavit to the other party. That purpose is served when the other party has received the affidavit. So this practice, it was adopted, experimented in court, and the results were very good. It not only reduced the burden of the court, but also helped in examining the witness on the day. Now, presently in civil cases, the witness can be examined through local commissioner also. So that practice, if the affidavit is there, the witness will be examined before the local commissioner on any day convenient to the parties. Now the question is in the criminal cases. After framing of charge, case is fixed for the prosecution evidence. Some judiciary of the right witness number 1 to 4 be called, be summoned. Some don't write it and instruct the element to summon the witness the way the learned presiding officer wants. My suggestion in this regard will be, which is based on my experience and the experience of my colleagues, that on the day charge is framed, just go through the list of witnesses. Suppose there are 12 or 13 or 14 witnesses in a particular case. On going through the list, you will find that only 4 or 5 are the material witness. If it is an injury case, the injured is material, eyewitness is material, doctor is material, then IO is material, or some one or two known witnesses may be material. Remaining are all performer witnesses. Some have to tender affidavit or their statement is formal. If it is a NDPS case, murder case, or any type of case, the nature of witness is like this. Most of the witnesses are formal, and only 3, 4, 5 witnesses, 6 witnesses are material. Maybe if the number of witnesses is more, that is only in few cases, and they can be planned accordingly. Here I will like to discuss my personal experience in short. A case was sent to me by the Honorable Apex Court with direction to decide it within 3 months. It was a CBI trial. I got it and I found that there are about 70 witnesses. When I perused the file, I found some of the accused have even not appeared in court. Anyhow, the accused were summoned within 10 days. Arguments heard, charge was framed. It was certainly a challenge to write such a huge number of witnesses within 3 months. So what I did was, I fixed the case thrice in a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. In advance, I just passed the order with so and so witness will be examined, will be summoned on Mondays. This witness will be summoned on Wednesday and the other on Friday. Like this on the next Monday, Friday. And I tell you that before that 3 months expired, I had, with the cooperation rendered by the defense counsel, rendered by the prosecution, all the witnesses had been recorded and the statement of witness of accused in this 313 was complete. No doubt I could not complete the defense evidence within that period. So had to seek the extension of time and the case was decided. It was just for the reference sake. So I will advise the judicial officers that after framing of charge, make the group of witnesses, fix at least 3 dates, like you are framing the charge today, fix the date of 15th August, 30th August and September, any 10 September, and pass the specific order with so and so witnesses to be summoned for 15th of August, 16th of August, and then 30th of August and September. I'm just taking the notional date. I know 15th of August is Independence Day, but so the witness will appear. If some material witness is not even available on that day, formal witnesses will certainly appear, and the case will be completed within 3-4 months. This has been experimented, and this experiment was very successful. Once in a seminar, a judicial officer just put a query that, sir, we send the summon to the official witnesses in criminal cases. They don't appear. We ultimately attach their salary, send the warrants of attachment of salary. Still, they don't appear, and their salaries are also not attached. What should we do? What should we do? In this regard, there is a very simple suggestion. Suppose you are attaching the salary of any official of the district administration, police, or anybody. and send the attachment warrant to the concerned office. Make sure that the copy of that attachment warrant is sent to the treasury officer of that district, and I make sure that the concerned person will not get his salary. Treasury officer will never release his salary for the month after receiving the court orders. And the experience is that the witness will turn up on the next date and seek the release of his salary. I think time is going to be over. Should I continue?
Sir, I think you may continue, sir. I think you're talking which is relevant to everyone.
I just sum up now within 5-7 minutes.
Sure.
So, adopting this practice, which is based on experience, will certainly help. One more thing we had done, which practice can be adopted by the judicial officer, while fixing the case for prosecution evidence, which I am saying, suppose you have fixed the date of 16th of August. Also fixed 17th of August as a free day. Now the question is, why free day? It has a purpose. If you can keep the case for 3 days, what will happen? If suppose statement of witness is not completed on 16th of August, it will be completed on 17th of August. Another effect it will have is that the counsel has to attend to other cases on 17th of August. He will make sure that he curtail the unnecessary cross-examination and the witness is examined, even if the presiding officer have to sit some extra time, say for half an hour or 1 hour, but the case is complete. All the witnesses are examined. It will help the purpose that witness has not gone examined and the list of witnesses who were summoned for that day is over. So these, I will again repeat that after framing of issues in the civil case, don't fix the case for evidence of party, rather call for list of witness and affidavit of the witness and then fix it for evidence. Similarly, in the criminal cases, after framing of charge, categorize the witnesses for 2-3 dates, fix 2-3 dates, and with every date keep 1 free day. Just experiment it and you will find a lot of difference about it. And this will certainly resolve the issue to great extent that the witness will not go unexamined from your court. There are certain issues which deal with the court management, like control over court proceedings, court language of judgment and order, how to draw balance between quality and quantity. I have touched some of the aspects already in my address, and regarding the quality and quantity, I will only suggest that so far as the quality is concerned, a judicial officer cannot compromise with the quality. It is his order, it is his judgment, which is read by not only the lawyers, not only by the superior courts, but by the litigants who are quite educated. They comment upon the judgment. Even sometimes even media takes the judgment, and we have read many articles on the judgment. So far as the quality is concerned, you have to be very, very careful. Legal softwares are available. This SCC Online, Law Finder, and so many legal software have been provided to the judicial officers, which were not available at the time we joined this profession. So this should not be a question in your mind that how to maintain the quality. Quality is to be maintained, and you have to work hard this is also pointed out when we attend some seminars, that workload is too much. It is there, as I've already discussed, that time management is required. Nowadays, a lot of time is spent on the social sites, so you have to take care how much time you have to spend on the social sites, how much time you have to spend on the mobiles. This time, this use of social sites should be a facilitator and not a distractor. So with this, and keeping in view the time I have already taken,
My lordship, we have time because usually we keep 20-25 minutes for the question answer. But I've been getting a lot of comments in the question answer, wherein the advocates from Tripura, Tamil Nadu, from ACJM sir, from PNH, they all are saying that they would love to hear you. I think there are a lot of question answer would not be that much in this scenario. So if my lordship wants to continue, so we have time, sir.
In fact, I just wanted to touch one of the point concerning the court management is that quantum of work in all the states, a particular work is assigned, who is expected from a judicial officer. In the state of Punjab and Haryana, it is in unit system. So usually we hear from the judicial officer that it is very difficult to give disposal in terms of unit to decide this much of cases. I want to share with them that in our times, say before 2012, in the state of Punjab and Haryana, a judicial officer has to give disposal in terms of 125 minutes. This was also the norms in our times in '83. At that time, I tell you, we used to have typewriters. Just think of completion of a judgment on a typewriter. We will dictate to the steno. He will type it. We will correct it. He will retype it. And the very funny side of it is that he will commit some other mistakes in retyping. We have again to correct it. And a judgment before making it final is to be typed 2 times, 3 times, and we have to give a disposal in terms of 125 minutes. Similar is the state of regarding the witnesses. They were examined in the court and statement was recorded on the typewriter. Then the correction was done with the hand. So it used to consume a lot of time. We were not having any legal software at that time. Now we have all the legal software, then we have to all right call for that AER, call for that SCC, which were also not easily available. So in 2012, a committee was formed in the Honorable High Court to revisit this disposal in terms of units. The entire system of units from 1903 to 2012 was studied. Even in the, I tell you, even in the British time, there was a unit system. So it was studied, then so many inputs were taken. Some changes were made, like for a particular case under Excise Act, if a judicial officer is getting 2 units, were increased to 3. For some other work, interim applications, units were prescribed. Earlier, they were not getting the units. For bail applications, units were prescribed. Ultimately, for one, when we prepared the list, that 125 units came equal to 160 units. But the Honorable Committee, I was also part of that, thought it proper that it should be reduced to 145 units. That 145 units is equal to around 110 to 115 units of that date, of the earlier times. So quantum has not increased. What I want to convey is quantum has not increased in any manner. Rather, the facilities have increased. Now on computer, you have not to, you can do the correction very easily, even while reading the judgment. From the year 2007 till 2010, I was totally paperless. I have never read my judgment on papers. At that time, my steno will type the judgment. He will give it to me in pen drive. I will read it on the laptop, do the correction, make it final, and send it. The things have become so easy. So quantum has not increased. Yes, our time management has got disturbed. Now we are devoting time to certain other activities also, and we have only to draw a balance. So what I think is the quantum of work has not increased, and required quantum work can be easily given by any judicial officer with the help of time management. And time management is again a skill, and every judicial officer is well equipped to use that skill to give the better decision. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm sure there'll be a lot of, if it would have been an actual live session in terms of everyone could hear you and you could hear them, I could have heard claps, applause doing rounds. I've already got some, very wonderful feedback in the question answer section. Members have enjoyed it. Members have been writing that it was a very helpful lecture. And we needed this at this point of time. Some have written that, it is a session that was required at the right time because this is a time of introspecting, because we have some bandwidth to do introspect. So I think, and we have messages coming from Tamil Nadu as well. Advocates who have joined from Tamil Nadu, Tirupur. So it's a nice thing. Like I said in the starting, addressing the entire nation, and at this point in time, it's quite motivating, and it's I think you have done. I'm no one to even comment on it, but I think looking at the comments, everyone enjoyed it, and there is one.
In fact, Mr. Gill, I wanted that we should not discuss because whenever such webinars or seminar, a lot of law is discussed in such type of webinars. So avoided discussing the law. So I tried it. It should be only experience based, and it should be a general one.
I remember, sir.
It's a departure from the routine practice.
No, so I remember when I was speaking to you yesterday, you made it very clear that it'll be all about practical aspect of it, and it is not just the topic. It is actually going to be the practical aspect. When I asked you that, sir, will you be talking about law and all? They're like, no, I'm not going to talk about law. I'm going to talk about something which is required, which is practically been experienced. So I think, sir, that's what we have seen today, and I'm really, really thankful to you for that. There is one question, sir. The question is, what should be the language of a civil judgment? One of the members wants to know that. What should be the language of a civil judgment?
Though I have also prepared that point in detail.
Sir.
Firstly, the language of the civil judgment should be very, very simple. As I have already discussed, that judgment is not to be read only by the lawyers, by the counsel, but also by the
litigants.
litigants, by the general public. So what is required? Firstly, describe the facts very carefully. Here I would like to point out, with all regards to my younger brothers and sister judges, that don't expect that Steno will give you the facts. Steno will type the facts. This is a practical. We sometimes find that some of the officers say that let the facts be typed by the Steno. Steno is not a judicial officer. If he has the capacity to write a judgment, he would have been a judicial officer. He would not have been a Steno. So do it yourself. It will help you a lot. When you are dictating the facts, it will make the flow of judgment. Otherwise, you may not be in a position to connect with the facts and go astray. So, first of all, describe the facts very carefully. Always remember that it is your order and judgment which will be read, scrutinized, and commented upon by the High Court. So be careful while citing the law and while discussing the witnesses, discussing the evidence. The language you use in the judgment and orders reflect your command over the facts and case of the case and your skill. Sometimes some of the judges will feel that they can use very legal language. I don't use some other word. Legal language, Roman words, and this one. Don't use any proverbs. Be simple, clear. What you want to say, what the other party wants to say, what the counsel has stated, what the other counsel reverts says. What is your findings? So simple and clear language will convey a message, convey the better findings. So don't go for the tough words, heavy words that one has to open a dictionary. One may be very intelligent, one may have done the literature in English or any other language, but be very simple and clear. This is my advice to everyone.
So, sir, I think one aspect, like we talked about how the court needs to manage, and you opened this webinar with the note that during this pandemic, and we talked about that everything has escalated. It's I was reading somewhere it's a black swan event. Black swan event is that when things which were supposed to take change in the period of 5 or 10 years, it changes in like 1 month or 2. So it's a black swan event that we have gone through. But sir, there's one question from an advocate. He's saying that what should the advocates be prepared for? How they can help once this pandemic is over, once they go to the court? What are the judges expecting from the advocates, and how they can help in the court management after this pandemic is over, sir? What would be your advice, sir?
What I feel is that after this pandemic is over, it will take some time to come to adopt the actual routine. The things will be like that. So far as the lawyer party is concerned, a lawyer who has come well prepared, he is not only prepared with the contention he has raised, he must understand what is the contention of the other party and how he has to rebut it. So he should concentrate on that too also. Your point of view may be right, may not be right, but you have to be careful what issue the other party can raise. So come prepared for that. Always anticipate what issues can be raised by the other party, and be clear about the facts. So if you are clear about the facts, it will take 2 minutes in the court to make it. But if you are not clear about the facts, even the lengthy argument will not serve any purpose. And I tell you from my experience of 36.5 years that you cannot take much time in the court. You have to be brief. In our times, we used to study presses in English.
Yes, sir.
So I think we have been very successful because we were that was a topic of our interest, and we were doing presses and presses. So that helps a lot. So if you are clear, you will be in a position to put forth all the facts very precisely, and the judge will be in a position to answer that query in a very simple manner, in a very short and precise manner.
So I think it's the basic requisite that we can expect from the officers of the court, like as an advocate. So rightly said, sir. So if you have a couple of more minutes, because we have asked for your time, and I might be exceeding your time. So if you have time, I have a couple of 2 questions. Would that be? So can I ask those questions, sir?
And you can carry on with that.
So there's a question that recently there's an instruction that salary of the officers or officials should not be attached to make them appear in court. Rather, other methods should be adopted. The question is, please advise what are the other methods that can compel them to appear?
This I have touched this issue that salary attached. That is the answer to the question of the judicial officer. Because I just remember Justice CP, Honorable Judge of the Supreme Court. He used to say that that judiciary doesn't have any power of its own. For finance, for infrastructure, for salary, for staff, it has to look towards the government. For the execution of the orders and judgment, it has to take the help of the police or the revenue officials who are not under the judicial officers. Now the question is how to summon the witness. Procedure is prescribed. I agree with you that attachment of salary should be the last resort. One should not rush to it. Before that, there are other processes like summon, bailable warrants. And if the witness is official, the problem comes there. If the witness is official, always write to the head of that department. In criminal cases, we usually find that judicial officers write last opportunity and give the summon to the airport, who send it to the police station, and no results. Last opportunity remains on the summon. Now, if they send the last opportunity summon to the concerned SP or SSP of that district through district and session judge, see the results. Because the district and session judge will send it to the office of the SSP. There it will be kept in some record. And immediately they will swing into action. So instead of, and in the same manner, if there is some other department, write to the in charge of that office, head of that office, to spare the witness to appear in court. And nowadays, as I have already touched this issue that we are examining the witness through video conferencing, the day will not be far away that this video conferencing will be used at much larger scale.
So one last question. I'm going to keep it very precise. So we were talking about that there's a lot of delay, and that's why we were talking about court management and being precise and keeping it simple. There's one aspect which has been raised by Amanpreet ma'am. It says that a lot of time the delay is also because the miscellaneous applications are filed at the last stage of the suit, which delays the matter. How can we tackle this situation, sir?
Mm-hmm. It's a very important issue which has been raised by the concerned judicial officer. I tell you how to deal. The application is not moved only at the fag end. It is moved when the case is fixed for evidence, or some other states. Suppose the case is fixed for evidence, the date is say 29th of July today. What the party will do? They will move an application a day before, and on the date fixed, the court will just fix it for reply. So my view on this point is, first, never derail your case. If an application comes in between and the case is going for, say, evidence or some other stage, for argument, give an interim date for that application. Say case is to be fixed for PWs. Fix the date in October from July. Fix the date in September from July. In the meanwhile, 10 days time can be given for that application. Reply will come, and before the date fixed for PWs or DWs, the application will be disposed of. Case will come on track. The second the point raised is, at the fag end the application comes, how to dispose it of. There are two ways of it. Sometimes the application is material. Decide it immediately after taking reply and hearing the party. If they have to go in appeal or revision, they will utilize the opportunity available to them as per law. But sometimes such application is given which is having no base. So if that is like that, the judicial officer can keep it to be decided along with the case also. But while ordering that the application will be kept pending, he should be careful.
So sorry, sir. Sorry.
So he should be careful that the application is not regarding, say, amendment of pleading, addition of parties, applications for additional evidence. That are to be decided immediately, because law provides them the opportunity, so these are to be decided. But expeditiously, these can be decided in a time-bound manner.
Sir, thank you. I think, sir, that brings us to the end of the question. There are a lot of compliments. There are a lot of thank yous members are putting over here, because and I think I totally agree with every one of them that, first of all, I think I am not really sure how many I'm sure no one knows about this, that you came on board at a very short notice. You were very open from the starting. You never said that I will only come for 1 hour. I was told by Balram sir that you were very keen to talk to members. So I think that's a very, very important aspect, sir. And I think we can't thank you enough for giving your time to us. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And there's something I think which I'd like to voice out. Jasmine ma'am from Jalandhar has said it, and I think that's what I also feel. She's saying that thank you, Lordship, for sparing your valuable time and sharing with us such an enriching experience of your career, because you have brought in the entire, so many decades together, and making a small capsule of information and giving like a dose to all of us. I think we can't thank you enough. That's all we can say to you, sir.
Before I conclude, I will just share one of the message I just received on a social site.
Sure.
That was, heavy rains remind us of challenges in life. Heavy rains remind us of challenges in life. Never ask for a lighter rain, but for a better umbrella.
That's so apt.
Thank you.
I think
thank everybody who has remained attentive to this webinar. Thank you.
Yeah. So, on behalf of the Chandigarh Judicial Academy, on behalf of all the members who have joined today, on behalf of SCC Online, I would like to thank you, sir, for giving your time and sharing all this experience. And I think on behalf of us, on behalf of Academy and you, sir, I think we, like you said, we this session would have not been a success if members would have not taken out time from the busy schedule and attended the session. So on behalf of Lordship, on behalf of myself, on behalf of SCC Online and Chennai Judicial Academy, we like to thank every one of you from all across India who have joined in today. The session was fruitful. I know it because I have got less questions and more compliments in this session. So I think it's very, very heartwarming, and I think this session could have been possible without all your presence, all your people who attended the session. So thank you so much. And now we will end the session. Sir, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.